Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening to the sound bites. I have Jennifer Harrison, who's joining me as a co-host today. Jennifer, welcome. Thanks for helping us out.
Of course.
And our guest today is Charles Wilson, who is a Republican running for the Vermont State Senate in Caledonia. There you go. Long ride today, I'm sorry.
Yes, but it was a nice ride.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day. So would you introduce yourself to our audience?
Well, I'm Charles Wilson. I was originally from Pennsylvania, west of Allentown, out in Amish country. And I spent my youth there. There was a lot of trees, a lot of farms. My parents sent me to military school in Virginia, Fishburne Military School,
Nice.
where I graduated. I went 1 year to Lehigh County Community College in north of Allentown, and then I went to Westchester State College for a year. I got bored with it and dropped out. I started a courier business and went along, and then things got overdeveloped in Pennsylvania, and I had skied many times in Vermont, and I said, well, I'm going to sell out and move to Vermont. So I moved to Vermont, met my wife, we got married. We had a 60-acre farm in Sheffield for a while.
Nice.
And I became a painting contractor for 28 or so years. And our farm was like a gentleman's farm. We had horses and animals and had a great time. But as you get older, I had to cut 10 cords of firewood a year, and it got old.
Say no more.
So we sold out and moved around, came back, and so I've lived in Vermont now 34 years,
Great.
about 32 to 30, it's over 30 years. And it seems it's a bit not as easy to live in Vermont as it was. There just seems like everybody's opposed to just about everything. And so I'm not a politician. I don't really want to run for the Senate, but I did it out of a sense of duty because I'm concerned about our future.
Yeah, it is much different. I moved up here in '89, and my husband was born and raised here, and we're always talking about how much it's changed. It's really difficult.
Yes.
But we camped in Gettysburg for 4 years, and I just love and we used to go to the Amish country. We were brought up with some seriously good food.
Mm-hmm.
Oof,
Yes.
that stuff is great. They know how to fry anything. Those people. Go ahead.
I have ancestors in Lancaster.
Oh, do you? Nice.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, welcome. What are your key priorities that you are discussing with your voters and hope to pursue in a legislator?
Well, concerned about the economy.
Yeah.
Small businesses, with this COVID-19, a lot of businesses have disappeared. A lot of them are struggling, and there seems to be, I have a sense to help recover that because my wife and I still operate a small business, but I don't really do anything in it other than we talk things over. She does the whole thing, operates the whole thing. She does a lot with seats and chairs and stuff. I'm concerned about farming. It would be great if we reestablish farming, get rid of the regulations, because there's just so many regulations. The farmers are struggling, and especially dairy farmers, just from the time in the COVID-19, I forget there's been a lot of dairy farms go under. And I'm concerned about taxes. I don't know as Vermonters and businesses have more money for taxes, less regulation, and I think we need to get back to the Constitution. We have a Constitution in this state, in this country, and we need to get back to that to settle things. We just can't keep going the way we are.
Great priorities. I like that you included agriculture.
Yes,
We seem to have forgotten this is an agricultural state.
yes.
Very important.
Yeah. Have you heard of several farms that have closed already? I haven't heard that just down here, so.
I've heard there's been quite a few farms. I forget the number.
Oh, but they've just have to
But,
ask Benson Tibbetts, really.
Dairy farms have
Yep.
gone really rough.
Huh.
I mean, it seems like everybody runs the dairy farms except for the dairy farmers.
Well, this thing with runoff is really, I know they want to help the environment because they understand how important it is, but it's so confusing with the runoff regulations and they're blaming them for everything and the cows and,
Well, they're going to ruin,
Yeah.
frankly, that's going to ruin the state.
Yeah.
The-
that's who we are.
Yep.
Not really. So I don't know if you've hung around the legislature very often, but when you go, you'll be asked to pick a committee. And I was just curious, what kind of which committee would you be most interested in, and then what would you hope to accomplish your first year?
I would like to help restore the Constitution to be our dividing line in what we do, and I'd like to restore freedom of religion and freedom of speech. In Vermont, we don't really have freedom of speech anymore.
Nope.
You mention the president's name and people go wild,
Yeah.
and there's something really out of order with that. And speaking about out of order, that's why I would like to be on the ethics committee.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, and it
Yeah.
is interesting.
Yeah, because that committee is separate from the legislature. What you're talking about might be more floor action, where you could stand up and make your case for those things. But the ethics committee, I'm trying to think what would be the closest committee to that. Sadly, be probably judiciary, but anyway, I think agriculture and the environmental committee would be a place that you could really flourish. Especially agriculture with your background. We have very few farmers in the legislature, and you miss them because they add so much to the discussion. So there you go. The ethics committee is really, that's another whole story. So anyway.
So in this time of seclusion, how are you reaching out to your voters? What is your platform?
My platform.
How are you reaching out to your voters? Are you knocking on doors? Are you doing Instagram or?
I do a lot on Facebook, although I'm still learning how to do it. Making phone calls, emails, and then my wife and I will go out. That's my team, myself and my wife.
Right.
We go out and we hand out palm cards. At the post office, the grocery store, the dump is always a great
Oh, that's a
place.
great place.
Oh,
Yes.
that's
And-
like,
The
it is
dump.
like cocktail hour.
Yeah.
The dump.
It's-
Yeah.
And that's about the extent of it.
Yeah. But that's
see
what's
everyone
where
at
it's
the
come
dump.
down. Yeah, the dump. That's a big thing. I'm trying to remember what town it was, but if you didn't go to the dump, they didn't consider you a real candidate. I went there and Shap was there, the former speaker.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was cracking up.
It's so funny.
Yeah. Hi, Shap. How are you? But anyway, I know you've talked about taxes, and I'm sure you've been following COVID and how our revenues haven't exactly been coming in as we would have liked, and the expenses are rising because they're trying to help folks. We're okay this year in the budget, from what I understand, because we had a little left over last year. But next year, 2022, which if you were to be elected, that's the year you're going to have to deal with. Have you thought about how you would be what you would be willing to look at, to try to cut expenses, to try to balance the old budget?
Yeah, I've thought about that a great deal. First thing I would do is seek to find a way to cut the size of our government. The biggest employer in the state is the state
right.
government, and we need to cut that way back.
Right.
And find a way to do that, and have less regulations. There's so many regulations, it's hard really to do anything. And as far as recovering from the COVID-19, I think the state needs to be opened up as soon as possible, because we can't rely on money coming from taxing people.
Right.
One thing I stand for is less taxes, and I don't know of any Vermonters or any small business or any business that are falling by the wayside. I don't know of anybody in Vermont that can afford to pay more taxes.
Right.
You just can't do it, and,
Right.
and you know, have to find a way around that. And I'm a firm believer in hard work. My wife and I we've been married, oh God, forgive me, 30 some years, around 30 years to be safe, and we've you know, been somewhat successful because we worked hard.
Right. Right.
I mean, there were many nights where we, you know, and many days of just hard work.
Right.
And nowadays we can't expect the state to do everything. We just
Right. No.
can't do it. As far as the pension debt, we have to find out what the real number is, and then we have to find a way to fund it, because it cannot be kicked down the road
Right.
anymore. It just, you know, we have to look into these things, find out what the real number is, and then
Yep.
see what we can do
Well,
about
the one
it.
they're batting around is 4.5 billion
Yeah.
with a B. That's a scary number. But that's for everything, teachers, state employees, and and medical benefits for both. It's huge. It's just huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's, I understand, but I don't know for sure. I don't know if anybody does, but I think the number's larger than that. And we just
Really?
can't kick that can
Right,
down the
right,
road, so to
right.
speak, anymore.
Could be. It could be. I don't want to hear about that.
No.
That's just scary. For
know.
the amount of people we have here in this state to deal with that number, it's just, there is a plan in place. I just don't know how successful it's going to be, but we'll see.
The governor has said that the economy is not coming back as quickly as he hoped. What would you like to see happen?
Well, what I would like to see happen is open the state fully, immediately, have less regulations so people can operate freely. We have to have less taxes because people cannot afford to pay more taxes. To be asked to pay more taxes is just, there's a problem with that. And because this is a capitalist democracy, and it's a voting, there's stuff being passed now that, quite frankly, is just being passed. People don't have a say in it, and this is a democracy, and we have to have, you know, this stuff needs to be voted on, not just,
Interesting.
Not-
So you'd
not-
like to see a binding referendum on issues?
yeah, well,
interesting.
heading towards socialism, and
Yeah.
people don't want to talk about that, but socialism will ruin our country and our state. Things need to be brought up, talked about, and voted for, not just, well, do this.
Right. So you mentioned ethics, and we're Campaign for Vermont, which I'm associated with, and this show has talked a lot about ethics over the years. As a matter of fact, it was Campaign for Vermont's push that actually got the first piece of legislation in to be discussed in the legislature. But the problem is, there's no teeth, and I just wondered what you thought about ethics, and would you like to see them have some authority to do something?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
I think ethics are moral principles, and I think ethics are something you do. I don't think you can. I don't think you can enforce them other than to say if people are unethical. You're talking about the government.
Yeah, right. The legislature
If
and
they're unethical, then they need to be dealt with.
Right.
But I'm just not a person that's try to enforce everything. I think you have to let people prove who they are. And if things are unethical, then that needs to be spoken
okay,
into.
right. Yeah, that happened when exempt employees are appointed by the governor. We get to sign a document that's an ethics document. I should tell them all the stocks and shares and stocks I have, if there's anything there that would be in conflict, and if I'm related to somebody in state government and that sort of stuff. But the legislature doesn't have anything like that, and a lot of times people know of people who shouldn't be voting on certain bills because it's a direct, they're directly opposed by the person who's maybe works for the company or whatever. And also employees and people in Vermont don't have a place to go where they can make a complaint anonymously, and that's what the ethics committee is doing. But I understand what you're saying. It's pretty clear when it's unethical. That's what gets me.
I think that we have a system of government in place with a constitution that needs to be used. And can I quote John Adams?
You certainly can.
I can at least try to. John Adams said, if young people even know who he is.
I was just going to say that, actually.
But John Adams said something that the Constitution was made for religious and immoral people, and it's inadequate for anybody else. I think he said more than that. But the trouble is right now, the Constitution is not being used, and really people don't even know why you'd use it, because it's not taught in our schools.
Right.
And I think that's improper. We need to educate people so they understand what our form of government is, instead of just bypassing it.
Right, I agree. Civics should be taught in school.
Yeah.
We've asked for that for a long time, but they don't seem to want to do that, which is sad.
My wife is a substitute teacher, and don't get her started on that.
Well, I don't want to waste your time. I was asked for a year to teach at the Websterville Baptist Christian School, and I taught civics, and I did it as a volunteer. Not only did the kids love it, but their parents came to listen.
Sure.
Because they had no clue. And, but where would they learn it? Nobody teaches it. And they have no exposure. It's right here, but they have no exposure down here to the State House. Nobody, I don't think, goes there. When I was a DMV commissioner, I made new employees come with me over to the State House to understand what it is we're doing here and who we're doing it for.
Wow.
And they'd never been to the State House. It was the bizarre thing.
That's incredible.
Yeah, no, it's right here. Go ahead.
Well, separate from Black Lives Matter and their concerns, what are your thoughts about the protests in Montpelier and Burlington, and what would you like to see happen, and how do you think that we can bring peace?
Well, I think we'll bring peace when people want to make peace. I think I'm a personal believer that skin color doesn't matter. It's what's in a person's heart, it's what comes out of their mouth, and it's how we treat each other. And there has been awful things happen to black people, it's true. And every other race. There's been awful treatment of people throughout the ages, even as we live now. So I think we need to go by our original Constitution, or was it the Declaration of Independence, that said we were all people, men and women are created equal, and we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and I would add in through hard work. I'm all for helping elderly people, disadvantaged people, poor people, but to have a system where we just support people for not working, those people that want to get a job, get a job. I mean, I've personally owned 3 businesses in my life, had some success, but I worked at it. I have worked in management for a while for a major cleaning company, but they wanted to transfer me, and I didn't want to be transferred to a big city. But the thing is, when I didn't have work, I went out and made work.
Right.
And that's kind of a philosophy that needs to be brought back.
There's a saying that the capstone agencies use, that their purpose is to give a hand up, not a hand out.
Yeah,
Lift you up and get you qualified to work.
yeah.
So that's a good way to do it.
Did I
So-
answer all your questions?
You did, and you did a very good job. Thank
Oh.
you.
Yeah, so we
But-
also
but,
wanted to talk about
Excuse me
the.
one second, about the, it's okay.
No, go ahead.
How do you think, or what would be a good thing to bring people back together again? But you kind of answered that. There's so much tension right now.
Well, I think people need to be ethical, and I think they need to be moral. What bothers me is some people, a lot of them from out of state, can come in,
Yeah.
they can disrupt things, they can paint in the street, but nobody else can. And they go in and take over Battery Park. Now, I don't know any of the people, but it just doesn't seem like a right thing to do, to come in, take over, and then make demands. I mean, I don't know if I ever tried that in my life. I don't think it's ever worked.
I don't think so either.
When my
Yeah.
wife and I first got married, we used to tell each other what to do. I was a strong-willed man, she was a strong-willed woman, and it flattened out.
There you go. We came to an agreement.
Yes.
Yes, right. Well, Jennifer and I were at this thing at the State House a couple of weeks ago, and it was to honor the state police and to honor law enforcement, and there was a whole group of protesters there, and I'm not sure they honestly knew what they were protesting. They were just screaming a whole lot of words,
Disrupting
some of
things.
which I hadn't even heard before. So anyway, speaking of the police, they're calling for defunding the police. I mean, what is your thoughts about that? I've tried to write things in Facebook, but
I think that would be an absolute disaster. Police need to be supported. Their job is hard enough. And then to put, I mean, just the demand police to react and
Right.
do this, that, and the other thing, and they need to be supported. And we have laws on the books. If a policeman does things in a dishonorable way and it gets out of line, there's laws to prosecute it. Every one of those police that have been accused in Burlington that they have to resign, they've all been acquitted.
right.
So there's no real argument.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm sure their unions are backing them pretty strongly. They've been acquitted, and that's it.
Yeah.
And today, just so you know, we've been filming today, and it's September 11th. And I wrote on Facebook, we have to remember that when the towers came down, while everybody was running away, police, fire, ambulance, and emergency management, they were all running towards the buildings to help people in that disaster. It was horrible. Anyway.
Well, if I could just add one more thing, instead of defunding the police, I'd like to find out, somebody has to be funding Black Lives Matter. And I'd find out who it is and why. And if it's irreparable, unethical, I think they ought to be defunded.
I've heard it's many dollars, in the millions.
And, you know, I don't know why, honestly, it's allowed to go on. I can't find a rational reason why.
Yeah. If they started out peaceful and had the peaceful movements, I've protested in marches for things that I felt deeply about. I was kidding the other day with somebody, and I said, we sang the whole time. We didn't have time to be destroying. We kept ourselves busy by singing together to make a point. And now we're throwing bottles. And I stood up and talked at that event, and I kept thinking, what if somebody threw something at me? How do I do? Where do I go, to protect myself?
You duck.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Anyway, I want to ask the last question here, and we'll.
Why do you think that the best candidate, I'm sorry.
That's right, go ahead.
Why do you think you're the best candidate for the position, and why should voters vote for you?
Well, I hope I'm the best candidate. I'm not in this to waste my time, but I'd like to be a voice of the people, because our Constitution says the government is there and is supported by we the people, and we have to get the voice of the people back in. And we need to respect each other doing it. A state should not be run by special interest groups. It should be run by the Constitution. And we need to listen to people, hear them, and truly, a lot of people I've talked to don't want to have anything to do with the government because they think our voice isn't heard. Why do anything?
Right, that's true. A lot of people don't vote because they don't think their vote matters, but it does. We've had some key legislation in the State House that passed by one vote. Some really key pieces of legislation, and if you don't vote, you can't complain too much.
No. Well, but the people will.
Exactly. They do. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on, Charles, and wish you a lot of luck. You come from a very strong area up there. Caledonia is, I think they are interested in politics up there.
Yes, they
contrary
are.
to some other parts of this state.
Yes.
But anyway, good luck with your campaign. Jennifer, thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.